I'm one of the original Banana Boys. I was born in KwaZulu-Natal, in Durban, in fact. I remember coming home from kindergarten and my father, on arriving back from his shop in West Street, Durban, taking me on his knee and singing to me. And it was Al Jolson, Climb Upon My Knees, Sonny Boy. I was drawn to the written word from a very young age. The family memory has it that I was reading newspapers when I was 3 or 4. Not that I always knew what I was reading about, but I did at least have a little dictionary. And the dictionary habit, which has been with me all my life, started about that time. Never let a word pass your eyes if you don't know what it means.
He used to use these wonderful words, and some of them I'd never heard before, and that meant that I had to go and look them up. So, yeah, he developed in me a love of English. And I love finding new words in books that are really very different, and they always remind me of him.
But I've been in Johannesburg almost all of my adult life, from the age of 17, when I was admitted to the Wits medical school, until today, when they're still tolerating my presence here.
I don't think I'll ever forget my first day at Wits. We had to register. I sat down to register my matric results, very proud of the fact that I had just scraped a first-class matric, and I couldn't help looking over to the young man sitting next to me and registering his results, and he kept writing first distinction, first distinction, first distinction over and over again. This man turned out to be Phillip Tobias, and he was, of course, the best student in our class throughout the years that we were with him and subsequently.
I had come from a sort of simple family background, and I found it hard to adjust when I first came here. But I very soon made friends and found myself fitting in to the class, doing well, and in no time I was integrated. But there was a political background growing in South Africa to which none of us was immune, and that was that the National Party government had the policy of segregation in schools, in universities.
He was involved in the Wits SRC. He was the president of NUSAS, was a great speaker. He made a great contribution and guidance to, well, I'm only 3 years younger than him, but you know, we considered ourselves his juniors and treated him with respect and admiration. He had a lot of influence.
I have always considered myself to be privileged for all the wonderful people that I worked with. And Phil Tobias heads the list. He was an educator, and one of his pupils was me. and I got a real education from Phil Tobias.
His lectures were dynamic, they kept moving, they were animated, and so they were fascinating. And we found that many other students, not only medical students, would actually come to his lectures.
We will now see some slides illustrating
a wonderful
aspects
teacher
of the
and a great performer. They used to really look forward to his lectures because it was like a performance.
I appeared in Prof. Tobias's lecture on human anatomy and movement back in 1982. And there was one section, it was packed out, the Great Hall, there was one section where he did the three somatotypes, the endomorph, ectomorph, and mesomorph. And in those days, I was the classic ectomorph, which is very skinny. And so he had myself and one of his students who he'd told, if you want to pass your degree, you're going to appear in my show, who was the endomorph, the chubby one. And Reg Park was the mesomorph. And he had the three of us on stage comparing us. It was very funny.
That's that.
Phil was a wonderful head of department, and he could at times get quite ferocious about things that weren't properly done in the department.
He will call you in his office for any of the reasons, whether you did something good or bad, but you wouldn't last for 2 minutes in his office. That's why I gave him the nickname of Mr. 2 Minutes.
Because he was one of those people who kind of didn't appreciate, and I say this in the kindest way, didn't appreciate the fact that I had a family. I was living on the West Rand at the time. And he used to call me sometimes on weekends, and the hook was, are you coming to Hillbrow? He lived in Hillbrow, to exclusive books, because if you are old chap, won't you just pop in there something I'd like to talk to you about?
I remember when I was a junior staff member, often getting phone calls as late as 11 or 11:30 at night, just as my head had touched the pillow. And there was Professor on the other side of the phone, and he would say, Bev.
But with all that, he had the softest heart ever.
A fantastic man. He's got the most wonderful sense of humour, and he's an absolute gentleman.
He loves cricket. Always has loved cricket. My staff members would always tell me that Prof. Tobias was on the phone. And I knew what it would be about. It would be about cricket tickets for a test match, which we were always delighted to give him. But he never asked to direct. He would say to me, Ollie, I'm staying in the Schlangerock's Hotel. There's a test match on, I believe, this weekend. I believe the Aussies are looking in good shape. What do you think? And then I would volunteer, only with pleasure, invite him to the cricket matches.
And he has a lovely way of referring to me as my Vice Chancellor. Whenever he writes to me or sends me something, I just adore him.
In the dry, stony hills beyond Potgietersrust is a treasure trove of fossilized bones in which experts can read the exciting adventures of prehistoric man. Two of South Africa's best-known anthropologists, Professor Raymond Dutt and Professor Phillip Tobias, led a party of newspapermen and photographers around. The tour began with orderly piles of breccia classified according to color and depth found. Professor Tobias climbed down into the pit to show the different kinds of bone embedded in the rocks. Next stop were the caves themselves, which are largely limestone, and it is here that many of the discoveries have been made which have given us an insight into the prehistory of man.
I would say that over a period of 50 years, he has promoted people's interest in paleoanthropology, in the hominid fossils. He's enthused students, innumerable students, and he's not only kept the science alive, but he has positively influenced the careers of innumerable people who are now scattered over the whole world. He's an international figure. That, I think, is to his credit, but it's also to the enormous credit of South African science.
Professor Phillip Tobias, paleontologist and the foremost comparative anatomist on the African continent.
It's hard to pinpoint exactly what brings one into a field and what
motivates one in working in a particular field of research, but I suppose if one looks at the way man's evolved over the years, perhaps the past may give us a better understanding of the present and even a key to the future.
When I first arrived at Wits in the early 90s, I went very quickly to visit Sterkfontein Caves. In those days, before it was a World Heritage Site, the guide for the caves was a recorded Phillip Tobias deep in the earth. So you went down into this hole, and the attendant there pushes a button and his voice rumbles out of the earth like some sort of natural phenomenon.
Before were convinced from the delicate bony construction.
He's inspiring in as much as he's shown how you can do world-class science here. And I think a lot of people, a big problem in South Africa is that people tend to think that we can't really compete. He's demonstrated that you can, and that you can continue to do it well into retirement.
One must keep busy. Retirement without things to do is a dead loss. It's the kiss of death, if you will.
He's passionate about what he does. I honestly don't think he knows how to really get away from his work. It just encompasses his life.
Professor Tobias has tremendous energy when it comes to promoting paleoanthropology and for the promotion of archaeology. And recently I phoned him about another heritage issue that had come up, and he said to me, "Mandy, I'm afraid, you're going to have to take this on yourself now, because I'm not 70 anymore."
I would say that Professor Tobias ranks as one of the great South Africans of all time. What he has done, the kind of research he's done, the kind of work he's done in terms of just changing people's ideas and perceptions of where we come from and what we are, and the difficult period he had during the days of apartheid and racism, to come out as strongly as it did on a purely scientific basis against racist ideology and practices, I think is wonderful.
But what actual fact good does anthropology do? Sorry, that's landed you with one, hasn't it?
Yes, you're challenging my very raison d'etre. I believe it is philosophically terribly important that these fossils which we have been excavating in Africa are seen as common human ancestors. If ever one required a scientific basis for the concept of human brotherhood, this surely is it.
Professor Tobias is one of the great thinkers at Wits, one of the great researchers, one of the great figures and characters at Wits. And we're extremely proud to have him here at Wits. He gives us stature, he gives us a presence in the world.
In the late 1980s, I desperately needed to gain access to the Musée de l'Homme in Paris to research the story and the case of the now famous Sarah Baartman. My first trip to Paris, the authorities of the Musée de l'Homme said, no ways can you get in here. So my partner, Colin Richards, who was a medical illustrator in medical school at Wits, he suggested that I approach Professor Tobias, and Professor Tobias said, yes, of course, I'll write you a letter. And he wrote me this letter, and I went to the Musée de l'Homme and handed the director this letter, and not only was I given complete access to anything I wanted around Sarah Baartman, but also they wanted to keep the letter because they wanted to frame it because he's so famous.
It was 12 years after Dart's discovery.
Professor Tobias is a remarkable man whose commitment to his field of work is now giving our understanding of cultural heritage a lot of weight, and it's making our African Renaissance come alive.
You know, people often ask, what's Africa given the world? And they say it in a kind of sneering and derogatory way, as if they know the answer. Nothing. What's Africa given the world? And there is a simple, short answer to that. In fact, two simple, short answers. Africa gave the world humanity, and that's no small thing. And Africa gave the world the first human culture, And that's no small thing. I think love is the key to success. And I have always loved my work, and I still do. And above all, I love people, whether they are my students, whether they are my colleagues, my friends, my relatives. Love people. That is a pathway through the world.